Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's really lovely to see you here today. And this is going to be a really inspiring and really practical session on how to use AI as a true creative partner. So many of you know Matthew, but some of you won't as well. But our guest speaker today is Matthew Maxwell. Matthew, you'll introduce yourself in a bit, but you're not only a creative director, but you're also a PhD candidate in creative AI. So really at that intersection of creativity and technology. And I think many of your PhD colleagues are on the call as well, which is fab. So this session isn't just about ideas, it's about like real doing. So Matthew is going to share a screen and like dive right into the tools and ask you for some creative input along the way. Before we jump in, I'll just introduce me. I don't know most of you actually. So I'm Emma on left-hand side of this picture. I'm one of the co-founders of Spark alongside Jules. And at Spark, we're on a mission to help creative agencies and brands and marketing teams to lead their way through the AI era. So we're a team of creative AI experts with a background in agencies, corporates, and consultancy. Matthew, could you just go on to the next slide? Just quickly tell you about what we do. So we do a few things. We help you with just building our knowledge around creative AI. We put out lots of free stuff. I'll show you how to sign up to any of these if you're interested at the end, but we publish a fortnightly newsletter on like AI news and tools and tips. We do a monthly podcast and the same thing to help you kind of cut through the noise of all the AI stuff that's going on. We do benchmarking reports and webinars like this. And then we do half-day workshops to sort of to gain foundational skills on creative AI, really hands-on workshop, and then a 2-month accelerator program for businesses. If you could go on mute, that would be great, guys. With the 2-month program for real business transformation to stay ahead in an AI world. So that's what Spark does. But today's session really is about a taste of what is possible when you embrace AI as a collaborator. So I'll give Matthew the stage to kick things off. Feel free to put any questions in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat. We'll probably address those as we go on. There'll be time at the end as well. If you could go on mute, that would be awesome. But yeah, we'll get going. Over to you, Matthew.
Great, thank you, Emma. I'm just going to switch over to another mode here. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to see me as well while I'm chatting. Sometimes it gives a better impression. Right, thank you very much. So I'm going to show you some of the work that I'm doing as part of my PhD at Middlesex University in London, looking at artificial intelligence in contemporary art practice. And as Dorksy said earlier, before some of you came on, a lot of what we hear about AI is about, and from the government and from, most recently, it's about efficiency and it's about productivity and it's about very, very sort of sensible, grown-up adult things like that. But I think we're kind of missing a trick, to be honest, if we leave this technology to politicians and policymakers and entrepreneurs and capitalists. I think this stuff is important, and it's important that the artists get involved as well. So I'm going to spend about 15, 20 minutes talking about myself and talking about some of the work that I'm doing and some of what we rather grandly call research. I'm going to take you through one particular flow about a particular character in Shakespeare, Mercutio from Romeo and Juliet. And then I'm going to ask you all, us all, to collaborate on pushing that one a little bit further or pushing it in a different direction for reasons that I hope will become clear. And then at the end, I hope we're going to have some questions, and whether or not I can answer them is a different matter, but sometimes it's the questions that are more important than the answers. And I think, as Emma said, please interrupt at any time in the chat, or let's keep it interactive. I don't want it to be a complete monologue all the way through. I don't want to bore you that much. So I think it's always quite useful to know who is talking to you. So this is a little infographic of my adult life, certainly my professional life. And as Emma said, if you could go on mute, it would help not confuse me. So I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be like David Hockney because I read his book when I was about 12 and I thought that works. So after I'd done my degrees, I went off to live in Los Angeles, where I discovered actually the film business was a lot better paid than being an artist, as well as being, kind of a lot more, it got you out of the studio. Did that 5 or 6 years in LA. Accidentally married a French woman and went to live in France for a couple of years. That didn't really work out, so I came back to London, where I met the current Mrs. Maxwell, who got pregnant extremely fast. So I had to get a job. But this was around the turn of the century, around the turn of the millennium, when the internet was really kicking off. So I was able to convert really basic computer skills into some kind of a career. And then I joined up with Martin Torksey and some other chaps, and we put together Blue Barracuda as a digital interactive marketing agency. And that was a whole bunch of fun. And eventually we sold it and made a bit of money, which was a surprise to everybody, really. We got merged into an advertising agency, which didn't work out quite so well. So I peeled off and joined a mobile agency just at the time that mobile specialism became redundant, and so lost quite a lot of money on that one. But in that time, what I'd realized was that the internet had kind of bled out the side of the screens from being a kind of graphic design problem. It was somehow something much more immersive. And I joined Imagination, who are really state-of-the-art experiential agency doing exhibitions and interactive, a lot of motion control and face recognition stuff and crazy shit like that for car shows. While I was there, I kind of got a bit frustrated, really, because the whole experience that they were talking about on a car show, it's between 30 seconds and 5 minutes. But actually, that experience is much longer. The customer experience is much longer. And the people who are really doing that really well were here at Sapient, Publicis Sapient. And so I worked with them for a while, and then I kind of started to realize that there was yet another deeper layer, which was the application and the data layer. And so I joined Oracle in 2018, and then had quite a lot of fun with them until November 2022, when we all got made redundant and the whole team got made redundant. And so I was back on my own devices. But exactly that month, exactly November 2022, was when ChatGPT was launched. And I thought, well, this is a sign, isn't it? This is a sign from the universe. So went back to school in order to study AI. And that's where we're at now. And this is what I'm talking about now. This is my new studio, the Cyborg Studio. Obviously, if you work in, as many of you will know, if you work in agencies, you work in, you're always in a collaborative mode. You're always looking for the clever people, the sympathetic people to work with. In its most pure state, it's the advertising creative partnership with the copywriter and the art director. But increasingly, it's with people, with strategists and so on. So I kind of missed that, and so I've tried to kind of anthropomorphize it of me with my AI pal. And we've been working together on some stuff. So I'm just going to optimize. So I'm just going to show you an example of this real quick. This is, I'll show you what it is. It's this.
Something rich and strange, seen and sourly radius now. Ding dong, heart now I hear them. Ding dong bell. Ding dong bell. Heart now I hear them. Ding dong bell.
So this is an example of my taking Shakespeare's lyrics and themes and characters, particularly those written between 1597 and 1599, Bard fans. And the reason for that is this. So this is a map of Elizabethan London. I'm not a Shakespeare scholar. Like everybody else, we did it at school. I'd be sort of hard to persuade me to actually go and see a full play. I'm kind of more interested in Shakespeare as a historical character, and also the fact that he's a cipher. You know, we know very, very little about him. The autobiographical details are almost completely absent. All we know is the outputs. We don't know anything about the inputs, and in that respect, to me, there's a sort of there's a similarity with the way AI works. You know, we can see the outputs coming out. We don't really know what's gone into it. Anyway, this is Elizabethan London, as you can see and it's a district called Shoreditch, which is up here in the sort of top right. And as you can see, about 1590, the city wall is still in place. And there's only a small number of little gaps that you can get through the gates there. This is Bishopsgate here. One thing we do know about Shakespeare is that in that period, he was lodging here. We know this because of a court case he was involved in. And at the time, he was working in the Curtain Theatre. The Chamberlain's men had started off in the theatre. They'd had a problem with the lease, and so they'd moved into this one here. 1599, they dismantled that by night and took it all across and built the Globe south of the river. But because of the gates, you know, one thing you can assume, and what I assumed was, this is the way that he'd walk to work, up Bishopsgate Street. And this was interesting because 400 odd years later, I was working at Sapient here. Dan Eagles will remember it. Liverpool Street Station, get out there. And so I realized I was kind of walking along the same path. And I thought, you know, in the kind of classic megalomaniac style, I thought this must mean something. And around about that time, and we'll get to that. So around about, this is the Curtain Theatre. About 2017, where they were trying to build one of these big towers, they, much to their dismay, uncovered the foundations of the theatre.
You don't have that come in, this expectation that something's going to happen.
Nate, if you could just mute. Oh, great, you have. Thank you.
Something is about to happen. Your expectations will be granted. So I was quite bemused by this. You might remember Shakespeare in Love. This is Romeo and Juliet, which was premiered here at the Curtain. There's a whole bunch of significance to it. So 23rd of April, which is Shakespeare Day. It's the anniversary of both his birth and death. He managed to die and be born on the same day, which is why nobody really believes he's real. I am having an exhibition here on Curtain Road, right opposite. Actually, he's midway between the two theatres. So this is a psychogeographic importance, and that's a rabbit hole that we won't have time to go down. But I want to show you just an example of what we're going to be showing here. When I walked into this place thinking I can't really afford this, my heart sank, because it's a pop-up store which is designed for retail and has these big glass boxes which I'm going to project into something like this. This is a piece about Juliet, obviously from Romeo and Juliet. And a lot of this work is about contemporizing it. It's taking some of those themes, which do seem to be perennial, do seem to be persistent, and making them as bleeding edge contemporary as I can. So these will run as a sort of loop sequence. And I'm going to ask you in a second to help with developing some of this work. We'll also have some sound design there as well. The one I showed you earlier, which I skipped over, is an interpretation of Ariel's song from The Tempest, Full Fathom 5, Thy Father Lies. So we're going to be doing that too. And any questions on that, actually, before we move on? Emma, I can't see the chat or anything. In fact, I can't even see myself. So
no questions in the chat yet, I'm
Well,
afraid. But feel free to unmute and ask anything, or hold your questions for the later.
I have a question. I know that we had the other occasions perhaps to talk about it, but I wanted to ask you, to what extent what you use there is real? I mean, are there any real people, real cars, real? I mean, I can recognize London at the background, but other than that,
no, it's 100% synth. Well, that's a very good question. And the question of real and reality, of course, is where the philosophy comes in, and the difference between appearance and reality. how we perceive reality, how we think of it, and what's real to who, is a very good question with a very complex, long answer, which I'm probably not equipped to answer. What I will say simply is that no, this is 100% synthetic. It's synthetic Shakespeare, if you like. But of course, that thing about the inputs and outputs, AI only really knows what we humans have shown it. And that means endless pictures and portraits of individuals. So everything that's made is an amalgam of different people. But in the same way that, fiction writers will create characters that are usually an amalgam of different people and different personality types. So everything is fictional, but whether fiction is actually unreal is another question. It's a good question, though.
Thank you.
So let's talk about Mercutio. So we know about Romeo and Juliet. It's kind of one of the most famous plays that you do it at school. I've started reading quite a few, particularly feminist critics who looking at the play in a slightly different perspective. There are, to the modern ear, quite a lot of problematic issues, not least that Juliet is about 13 or 14 in the play. Also bear in mind it's a tragedy, everybody dies at the end. But one of the characters I was interested in is Mercutio. Mercutio is Romeo's best mate, and he's a bit of a lad. He ends up getting stabbed at the end. He's always, but I quite like this quote from Peter Ackroyd describing him as the bawdy, gallant, quicksilver friend, and his soaring spirit, buoyant and fantastical, unfettered by his ideals and delusions, which Shakespeare had to kill in order to make way for the romantic tragedy of them. So he's a great character. And he's typically played with a lot of kind of panache and bravado. But what really appealed to me, you may remember this 1996 Baz Luhrmann's version set in sort of fair Verona, which is essentially kind of Miami somewhere. And Mercutio is played by Harold Perrineau. It's his first screen role. He absolutely nails it, in my view, because he does show these two very different sides. He's a gangster. He's OG on Verona, but at the same time, somewhat transgressive in gender politics. And he does this fantastic version of Young Hearts Run Free in full drag. So absolutely, let's go with him. So the process begins, as you are, I'm sure, aware, ChatGPT, it based on prompts, text prompts. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. Using things like DALL-E, Leonardo, or Midjourney, which we're going to look at later, it also accepts input data in the form of visual information. And for an artist, of course, or a visual thinker, this is gold dust. So these are a few of the this kind of mood board, I guess, of what I want AI to think about, Gen AI to think about. So we've got a bit of Turner, just for the sort of lighting effects, and of course, Turner is a London boy, so there's a certain sort of location logic. There's a few of my paintings that I've done, kind of on the same theme. Before I got into the AI, there's some contemporary photography. It's Shoreditch. There's a lot of street art. Pokemon Go seems really relevant to this because what we're trying to do is impose fiction onto reality. This is the shot. This is actually the square. This is where Shakespeare lived in 1597. Over here, it's been redeveloped, but these guys are walking to work. Off they go. So we're putting all of these together, Dream Factory, things like that, plus obviously some of the text and lyrics from Shakespeare to try and provoke that. And one of the great things that, again, we'll try in a second, that Midjourney does is you can blend pictures. So in the broadest term, we're training the AI, but without any particularly kind of determinate end in sight. So these are a combination, and there's more. This is just a representative sample. This is a series that I was looking at about disguise. In Shakespeare, people spend a lot of time in disguise. At some point, this person turned into an eagle, which was rather fabulous. Again, some of my older paintings. This is a series about sleep in Shakespeare. This is a a digital painting of the sea in Croatia in the summer. It's absolutely sizzling hot. As you can see, well, maybe feel, I kind of thought, there's a combination of this heat and this intensity that I thought might be interesting to work with. So we plug it into the system, the magic happens, and it'll spit out within 30 seconds 4 different variations based on what it thinks I'm asking for. And there's a number of interesting things happening here, I think. First of all, because AI has no real kind of physical, it has no common sense, it doesn't really care. So the idea of a kind of a headdress or even a bird's tail grafted into the back of a neck, makes complete logical sense as far as it's concerned, doesn't care. The other thing I thought was really interesting with these was, if you remember, there's certain features that it's picked up on. So the eagle's crest and its beak, which is this very powerful yellow shape, and possibly in the sunglasses here, and possibly in this dress, it's picked up on that, but it's interpreted it in different ways. So this is a it's said, well, maybe it could be an awning, maybe it could be a storefront like that, or maybe it's a baseball cap. Or maybe it's actually a bird painted onto the back of the wall because it's spotted this sort of paint thing happening, and it's thought, well, I'll give you some of that if that's what you want. And also everybody's wearing these sort of fabulous face furniture. One issue with it as well that you start to spot is that there's a tendency of Midjourney to make everybody young and pretty. And I think this is because it's looked at so much social media, it's looked at so much fashion photography, that it has in its head this idea that humans were all young and beautiful and models, and we all live in this, which it's a nice idea, but and also I think with Mercutio it's probably right, because he is a young man and he has this sort of quite aggressive attitude. So there's some interesting things happening there, I thought. But I'm kind of always trying to kind of dissuade it from the prettiness and try and give us something a little bit more edgy is probably the wrong word, maybe a bit more profound, I don't know. And one of the things that when you look at Mercutio, there's a lot of banter, there's a lot of boys banter happening, and at one point, he's kind of his best friend, but he's the kind of best friend who's going to get you into a lot of trouble, as it turns out in this case. And at one point, he's taunting Romeo about his infatuation with another woman, and he says, "Oh, that she were an open arse, and thou a popperin pear." Now, a popperin pear is actually exists. It's a kind of a pear, and it comes from Popperin in Belgium. An open arse, so the critics will have me believe, is a kind of colloquial expression for a particular fruit, a medlar fruit. It could be a persimmon, which resembles. Well, I'll leave it to your imagination what it resembles. Critics, they've had a lot of problem with this because nobody can believe that Shakespeare would be quite so coarse, apart from, as well as the suggestion of quite what he's suggesting he does to Rosaline. So I thought, well, that's dangerous. Let's try it. So putting that into the prompt, into the text prompt, an open arse and popperin pear, immediately ran into the buffers of Midjourney's community standards. Naughty words not allowed for very good reasons. It doesn't read. There are guidelines to prevent you from creating pornography or violence or culturally insensitive stuff. So there's quite a lot of censorship. But I thought, well, the thing is, so I didn't really want to boulderize it, as they say, but these are lines that are meant to be spoken. They are acting. So I thought, well, I can just phoneticize it and open R's and now pop an impair and see what happens there. Now it turns out that RZ actually doesn't mean anything. So we have managed to remove that. But for some reason, and this is where things start to get mysterious, is it's kind of, in my mind, picked up on some of the sexual overtones. And again, maybe this says more about me than it does about AI, but a certain sort of phallic tumescence starting to happen, which again, if you think back to Mercutio, is not inaccurate. And maybe that's what we were looking for. There's other things happening as well. Here, bottom left, apart from the fantastic, amazing shades that he's got on, some kind of cradle cap or mange or some kind of skin disease, which with this sort of really ornate little diamond choker, there's sort of fantastic contradictions happening. But I think this is the one that I chose, and I should set this up by saying what we're going to do in a moment is when we have these 4 variations, the whole process is like a tree diagram. You have to pick a corridor of doors. You've got to pick a door to go through. I liked the face painting that was starting to happen here, and sort of the way that the color is being reflected in that. So I went with that one. Asked Midjourney to zoom out and give us a bit of context, and started to see some more surprising things happening. Like this costume, although we started off with quite a athletic-looking young man, he or she or they or it is becoming more and more sort of matronly, in this sort of chiffon robe with the silk collar. It's really ornate, and some quite nice random compositional elements. The foreground here and then the super foreground out of shot, as well as this beautiful painted backstage with all this distressed color. So it's really rather beautiful. And slide is probably in the wrong place, but again, just a reminder of where we started here with Romeo and Juliet. This is Franco Zeffirelli's version, which at the time was really emphasizing the virility and the sort of sex appeal of Mercutio. This is Harold Perrineau doing his thing here. It's also interesting to see, if you go a bit further back, that this sort of ornate, slightly girly costume actually is completely appropriate. And so bearing in mind that this is what AI has trained itself on, and when you say, like, go and do me a picture of Mercutio, it's gone back to the internet and said, well, I think it's probably a bunch of these kind of things. So you can see the origin to some extent. Now, around about this time, I was thinking about all of this crazy costumes and crazy color. Around about that, which is the summer 24, don't know if anybody saw it on Netflix. There was a series of the Decameron, which is one of these classic Italian novels, I guess, and it's set in the 14th century. What's happened is that the plague has arrived in the city, and so all the beautiful young people all race off and secrete themselves into this garden in this villa off in the country, where they sit around and tell each other stories. This is a painting of the same subject, the Decameron by J.M. Waterhouse, one of the pre-Raphaelites. I've always controversially really liked the pre-Raphaelites, partly because I sort of, they're very contradictory. There's so much about Victorian morality invested in it. What I discovered with this, of course, this was painted in 1916, and 1916, Battle of the Somme, First World War is raging, over the channel, the flower of Europe, flower of youth are all dying in the mud. But here we're all sitting around in a garden with the kind of rock star lute player in his tight pants and, the adoring damsels, So there's a kind of contradiction and ridiculousness in it. And I thought we could try some of that. So once again, we kind of piled in and started to add some pre-Raphaelism. And we started to get things like this, which again, although initially I was thrilled because I kind of liked the conflict of the old Volkswagen, run off the ground, on one side there's decay, on the other side but what I started to suspect was, Midjourney AI is doing it again. It's just showing off its virtuosity, and it becomes very, very surface level. And so I kind of ran into the sand on this one because I thought, well, I don't really want that prettiness. I'm thrilled by the pink flamingos and this would make fantastic sort of mural or wallpaper, but completely lost any character. So it's a dead end, and this is where you guys come in. So let me just explain what I want to do.
Matthew, before you do that, we've got a couple of great
Yeah.
questions in the chat. First question about the biases and the type of person that's presented in terms of like ethnic background and age and demographic characteristics as well. I get in this case based on the character of I can never say the word. Sorry, Mercutio.
Mercutio,
My
Mercutio,
dyslexia is
no wonder,
not
actually.
helping me. Yeah, but and you touched on it, but I wondered whether just expand on what you found.
In terms of
In terms of
biases,
the images that turn. Yeah, exactly, and
ethnic
like how.
background, age, demographic, that one.
All
Yeah,
that
this is
stuff.
a really
Yeah.
interesting. This is a very good point. So, yes, first of all, one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is I'm only using these. There's quite a lot of artists who are getting under the hood and playing with the algorithms and sort of messing with the mechanics of AI. I'm not doing that. I'm focusing really much on the public access tools, and the reason for that is for this reason, for the bias reason, because a couple of years ago when this started, and there's a great example by my colleague at Middlesex, Rob Crow, where he says, "Well, you put in the word doctor, guess what you get? You get a white Anglo-Saxon male in a white coat of a certain age, because that's the assumption it's making. If you start going, okay, show me a female doctor, it'll show you a white female doctor. If you show me a black female doctor, it'll start off with a number of assumptions, and those assumptions arguably have come from the people who did the initial training, who tend to live in the US and tend to look a bit like me. So, but over the last 2 or 3 years, what we've seen is, because of the uptake in usership and the information and the training that people are giving it, that's starting to break down, because AI only knows what we tell it. It only knows what is correct and what is incorrect by the decisions that we make. So I think there's a moral or an ethical, probably, obligation to engage with it, because by doing so, we train it. So that's the upside. The downside is, as I said, is because the user base is getting younger and younger and younger. It's now defaulting to this sort of pretty thing. So all skin is smooth. All people are young and beautiful, which I think is because more and more young people are accessing to it, because it's $10 a month to do all of this, so you can.
Thanks, Matthew. We just had a question about your mood boards as well, that you showed us. The question was, did you prompt Midjourney to reference just the images in just that mood board, or also did you reference sort of other inspiration, for instance, like please reference Turner lighting or something like that? Was it a combination of kind of text prompting and your mood board that you used?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do they say in those Apple ads? Some sequences have been accelerated. So, and we can have a look at Midjourney as well. One of the things is that you roll and roll and roll and roll and roll and continually, and this is why I call it creative cybernetics, because cybernetics is the science of command and control. How does a snail know not to crawl over salt? Because it detects the salt, so it turns left. How does a mosquito find you? It just goes at random until it picks up a scent, and then so the cybernetic process is a constant adjustment. In fact, that's what we're going to do in a second. So we're going to try and do some cybernetics. But does that answer the question? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there, and I think this is a good point, because what I'm trying to bring, I mean, having spent 40 years looking at art and looking at pictures, my repertoire is not bad in terms of references and mood board information, but compared to AI, it's pathetic. Gen AI knows everything, but it's my job to kind of steer it in a certain way. And also, most importantly, sort of spot things which may have occurred randomly, and reinforce those. Go, mangy head, excellent. Amazing glasses, let's do that. So I'd like to get back into some of that if we can. So shall we have a look at
Yeah,
doing something
let's
together?
go for it.
Right,
Yeah.
and share again. Share. Right. So this here we are in Midjourney. Just as an aside, you can also use Discord. Where's Discord gone? I've got too many. Oh, Discord's up here. Discord is actually gives you a lot more control because you can put a certain amount of coding into it. But we're going to use Midjourney in its browser window. So this is where we've got. So you can see the kind of rolls of rolls and 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 rolls of pictures of things that have happened. But I want to take us back to here because this is where I kind of got stuck. Actually, it's not there, is it? It's one of these. You can see how I was trying to kind of, it started getting back into this painting thing, which is really seductive because it looks like these are amazing paintings, but of course they're not. They don't do what painting does. So this is rolling, rolling, rolling. See if I can find it. Was that it there? That was one of them. Let's just start here. So we've given this. You can see up here that we have supplied it with a number of options. There you go. It's down here. It's getting too pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more variations on it. I'm just going to ask it to vary it strong. And I'm going to go back up here and it's going to give me 4 variations on that. And what I want you guys to do, and probably do it in the chat, is select one of these 4 for whatever reasons. We're going to have to go with a majority view here. So let's hope we get one. To take further and see where we can take it. We seem to have kind of moved off slightly from Mercutio, but you know, that's not a bad thing. We might come back by putting him back in there if we can find a scene which works. So let's have a look at these a little bit.
Matthew,
Yeah.
we can't see number 3, I guess, very well because your wonderful outline is in front of it. Yeah.
Let's get rid of me. Hold on a second. We don't need me. Let's do that. And let's do that. So if we can zoom in, and so we've got,
Cool.
How many have we got here? We've got 1. That's number 1. They're all quite similar, to be fair. So we might have to jog it a bit further. We've also seemed to have moved to China, which is interesting. That's number 2. And that's number 3. And that's number 4. So they're all pretty similar, to be fair. So this one is going to be a bit of a crapshoot. What I'm proposing on doing is taking one of these and adjusting the prompt to bring us back to Shoreditch and bring us back to Mercutio. So
Matthew, you're asking everyone here to vote on which is the starting image that we start from before we push it back to Shoreditch.
Yeah, I'm thinking of what so that's number 1.
Cool.
That's number 2. That's number 3. And that's number 4. So number 4 is this great umbrella there.
Got some votes coming in. 2 is winning slightly. Oh no.
That's number 2.
Level with 1 now. Oh no, level with 4. It's going to be difficult.
1. They're much of a muchness, to be fair, these. So I think we're going to have to, as Bob Ross would say, make some big decisions here.
Yeah, we've got a bit of an even spread. Hang on, I'm just totting them up.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. 2, 1, and 4, I think, are neck and neck here.
Okay, well, I'll be the
make an executive. Yeah.
Yeah. I think let's go. Let's just go for 1 because actually let's go for 2 because it's my lucky number, and let's just have a look at that prompt. So as you can see, all it's got is these 2 images which are very, very similar. So I'm going to ask it to let's just pimp it a bit harder. All right, so let's see what we get. Now I find this totally magical, this whole process of chucking things into the pot and seeing what comes back out. I have a feeling this is going to push us in an interesting direction. It's certainly getting darker.
Are those apples? Oh, the
They
pears
are.
coming back.
They are.
Yeah.
There's fruit everywhere. It's fruity. So we've left downtown Guangzhou, and now we're in some kind of a. We're in some kind of a science fiction dystopian sort of fruit hell. This is quite an interesting character there, looking quite cyborg. What else have we got? Here we have a sword fight as promised, and this is interesting because not only is the sword fight, but Elizabethan London was a pretty violent place. A lot of Shakespeare's contemporaries ended up either dead or killing people, and everybody carried a dagger. Only gentlemen were allowed to carry swords. So there's a bit of that. There's a bit of that, although it's pretty theatrical. This is number 2. Again, more fruit, some interesting lighting effect. Just it's that sort of light and dark thing is kind of quite cool, isn't it?
That one looks a bit Art Deco.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Oh look, Sean Bean. Tell me that's not Sean Bean from Game of Thrones. Maybe it isn't. And who's this? Looks like. So this is interesting because she's got a dagger. She's again wearing something. I'm actually loving all of this, and there's flowers coming out there. We've got that sort of craquelure wall back, which is really fun. That's number 1. That's number 2. You're saying Art Deco. What was that, Emma?
Well, just the figure in the middle just seems kind of a reference of some kind of
She's got a kind of
1920s painting, and the hat.
Yeah, that hat, isn't it? With the kind of strange. Yeah, AI is very, very good at costumes, and this is really significant because the costumes were very important in Elizabethan theatre. They had no sets, they had no special effects. All they had was words, and a lot of really ornate costumes, which were important because in those times, how you dressed was what you were. There weren't any choices. If you were an apprentice, you had to wear a white hat and blue leggings if you were, etc. So the idea that somebody standing on a stage could be a king just by the fact that he was wearing a sort of a king's robe was completely convincing. Comes back to that question earlier about, is it real or is it pretend? Right, anyway, decisions. 4, 3, 2, or 1. Time to vote.
Oh, well, I think it's 3. It's just about winning.
3 was this one?
Looks like it.
Okay.
Yeah. If anyone wants to correct my maths, feel free.
Fine, I'll take it. It's not.
Yeah.
So there's a number of things we could do here. Again, we can add another image. So we can
should we try that?
Yeah, should we try? Let's try and provoke it with another image. So I've got it. Here's some I prepared earlier. And this stuff is kind of interesting because it's just background. Let me try a bit of that. And we also might just try a little bit more of Shoreditchy Land and actually see if we can't make things happen that way. And generate. Generating, Michael. And it's this bit. If anybody's interested, we can look at under the hood and have a look at what's happening in the background here. In fact, we probably want to move on and do that. Oh, crikey. So I hope this is giving a general idea of how this stuff works. So this is quite fun, isn't it? Because we're now reimagining this spot. I'm very invested in this particular crossroads in Shoreditch, where Curtain Road meets the Great Eastern Road. But I'm also and obviously, you know, its appearance has changed massively over the centuries, and there's no reason why it shouldn't change again. But here we've got this weird little ghostly figure. Floating down. We've lost Mercutio completely. I think the AI is just not interested in that character, or certainly we can't find anything novel to say about him. Okay, should we do one last roll then and see where we get? Any votes for number 4? Number 3? Number 2? Or number 1?
Cast your votes.
Cast your votes, ladies and gentlemen, please.
2, I think.
So
2 is the pick.
That's 1. That's 2. That's 3.
Yeah, we're very strong on 2.
We're very strong on 2. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what might be kind of fun. Why don't we do this? Let's save this image as the last sort of, where's that gone? It's gone somewhere. And we're going to swip across to Runway now, because we're going to animate it. Runway is a really fascinating app which allows you to do all kinds of things that you may have seen the lip syncing that I was using earlier. So I'm going to take that image that we just did. I'm going to drop it into Runway, and since we are running out of time slightly, I'm going to just let it roll and see where it gets to. This does take slightly longer. Actually, let's do turbo, because that's where we're at. So it's loading that image into Runway. We're going to do it landscape, and we're going to have to crop it slightly because it's the wrong aspect ratio. And we're going to generate 5 seconds of animation. And I have a feeling that it's going to pick up on that character and see if it can make her glide. This is turbo is slightly more expensive, but if you just do it in turbo, essentially you're talking about 10 pence a second of animation time, which if you've ever done any manual animation, you'll know is a bargain. Right, so just quite a nice subtle camera pan there.
Interesting, because the figure does look like she's porcelain or something like that. So,
she is just a sculpture, isn't she, really?
Yeah.
I can't resist finding out what happens next. Now, obviously here in Runway, there's a lot of, you know, it works on the same principle that it will combine textual and visual prompting. And people are making it's worth having a look at Runway and having a look at the studio, because people are making really clever stuff, much cleverer than I've managed to achieve so far, which is kind of annoying. But I'm a little bit more maverick.
And you don't know what the outcome is going to be every time.
No.
You don't know. Wow.
No. And that's amazing, because mostly in creativity, you have an idea of where you want to get to. You have an idea, you have an image in your head, and you try and get the painting to replicate it. This kind of abandons all of that. And if anybody's interested, this is the principal philosopher I'm interested in is Heidegger. Heidegger had a lot of interesting things to say about technology and how we use and misuse technology, which he was talking about in the 50s after Hiroshima and after the Second World War, etc. And asking us to rethink our relationship with technology. So rather than seeing it as a means to an end, so that you build a machine in order to kind of dig a hole in the ground, you can use technology as a means of revealing, that it can reveal something of the world to you, like wiping the mist off steam off a window. And I've really found that. I found that there's a whole series I did with buses, and now every time I see a bus, I look at a bus in a different way. So that's Runway. Any more questions? Because I see we're starting to
There's one more question, Matthew. Rob, about saying you're coming across the same issues that he finds with AI tools, that they run away with you. And I think, partly that is the beauty of them. They are a creative collaborator. They've got they take you in ways that you don't think of sometimes, but that can be really difficult when you're trying to incorporate a brand into it as well. And just asking if you have any advice for brand marketers or people working with a specific framework.
If you can read the sort of blogs and certainly on what people are talking about Midjourney, there's a lot of obsession with trying to control it so that it will give you what you want. Inevitably, I think Midjourney being a commercial product, they're going, okay, well that's what our customers want. Let's try and control it more. I personally, I think that's, as you say, Emma, missing the point, because it does remind me of, and forgive me, Torksy, when I say, we spent years flogging people banners, even though we knew they didn't really work. But there wasn't an alternative because, the advertising model was about selling real estate on a page. And so we'd taken something that worked in press and print and we tried to stick it onto the page. And of course, actually what people used is Google search and sort of, interrogating data from a different direction. So display advertising didn't really work. It's pull advertising, or push rather. Or so this is the same. I think. And it's a really good question because it's essential. Personally, my view is this is it's what they call an imagination prosthesis. It allows me to imagine things that I previously couldn't. What I do with those things becomes the next step. So, for example, a lot of these images I'll then take into Photoshop, which has its own generative capabilities. Photoshop in itself allows you to do a lot of manipulation and a lot of monkeying around. What Photoshop never does is, or never did previously, and other tools like that, they didn't help your imagination. They didn't empower the imagination. I think this is what this tool is. It makes available, the entire resource of visual information of humankind. But it's very, very, very undifferentiated, and that's where we come in. So it's a tool like any other. It has limitations, but ideally what it'll do is it'll push creative work in a different direction. And what I love about it is it resists our inevitable tendency to stick with what we know, to use formulae that have worked before. It seems to hate that. At the same time, it's kind of creating its own formulae. So everything is Miley Cyrus in a bikini, whereas actually I'm trying to kind of say something about. So, for example, there's a series about Titania in Midsummer's Night Dream, who's the queen of the fairies. You put in Titania, you get sort of fairies, but actually she's a queen. She's a woman of age, and she's a woman of experience. And so, trying to kind of push it in that direction. It's quite difficult, but I think that's where the skill lies. It's kind of allowing yourself to be pushed in different directions.
So just if I could just quickly come back on that and just ask, because that's really interesting. Because obviously in a commercial setting, so I've had a couple of brands in the last 6 months. I've been trying to use AI tools, and they have been really interesting. For one, it kind of came out with a really cool kind of retro brand character, which the client loved, said, oh, brilliant, let's use this. And it was you know, and I even read somewhere that on different days, Midjourney will output a different thing because it's got different information. And trying to then control that character was impossible using Midjourney because it just kept like, it was supposed to be a little guy with a jetpack, and it had come up with it, and it was really cool. Client loved it. And then to take that character and put him in different situations or create, like you say, a corporate video, it just ignored it and just went mad. So I then had to go back to the tools you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like Adobe Express is probably the one that I use most, but you have to kind of combo that in. Yet the client thinks, oh, you can just use AI and just press a button and it'll do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Jesus, you're sort of stuck in this mid space of, yes, that's true. And then the client starts saying, well, I had to stuck this in and this is just as good. And they just accept anything that AI chucks out. And it becomes just this repetitive kind of, you know, because those things you show are really impressive. The video you did, really, really impressive. And you show that to a client, they'll go, oh, that's amazing. But try and then recreate that with their brand. You're on a kind of hiding to nothing. So I don't know how we kind of overcome that. I don't know if anyone else has experience or tools that you can kind of, I have read somewhere that you can use a Discord server to create a code for a character, but I've not worked out how to do it yet.
Yeah, you can do a character reference. So you can say there's Discord is the one because you can actually sort of code it with a character reference. How well does it work? I mean, again, this stuff is changing every day, so give it a couple of months, it might work perfectly. I think in the meantime, what I recommend is, like, we'll take that, bring it into 3D Max, or build the character as a 3D object. It doesn't take long, especially if it's not photographic, if it's and then you can do anything you want with it, or create it as a vector illustration that can be then used. Right now, this tool is an imagination tool. It's not a production tool, and that's an important. That's clients going to have to accept that.
Yeah.
Whether they will or not is a different question.
So if you're helping agencies, is that what you would tell them? Would you sort of say, look, you can use this for brainstorming, getting ideas, but then you have to stick with your traditional Adobe set?
I think it really depends on the brief, doesn't it, as well, and the client. And it's partly about. I think we're seeing a lot of agencies are using it mainly in the ideation process, like we've gone through today. But there's also a piece about just helping your clients understand how you're using AI and what you're using it for, and then that helps the misconceptions about it that you were alluding to, Rob, I think too. So we help agencies have those conversations too. There is one more question, and we've run out of time as well, though. So we can answer the question, and if you can't hang around, don't hang around. You can watch the recording. Matthew, are you okay to answer one last one?
Absolutely.
Cool. So this is about, I'll read it out. So currently I find 99% of Gen AI imagery has a surrealist or psychedelic style, which isn't necessarily what you want. So there's like a narrow stylistic route it keeps going down, which seems odd considering there's so much reference material. Like, does it all feel very samey to you as well in your experience, or are you finding ways to get around that?
The way I know what you're talking about, I think, and it's like working with any creative partner. They don't always do what you want. They can be really annoying, partners in general. Let's face it. But I think that is the way of working with the technology, not trying to get the technology to do things for you. It is a collaborative act, and the way around it is what we've always done, which is, okay, let's just throw something random into the mix. Let's throw something quite specific into the mix. Let's try specific terminology. Just to pick up that point about how do I take this character and how do I do something with it? One thing that's really effective is if you have some technical knowledge about photography, if you can specify an f-stop, if you can describe one of the exercises that I do when I'm teaching this is I'll show people a picture like of a cat sitting on a mat, and I'll say, like, write a detailed description of this. You know, talk about the context, talk about the texture, talk about the lighting, talk about the photography, talk about the colors. Then we'll put it in and see how close we get to it. So it's never going to do the job for you. And actually, all of that technical knowledge that we've built up over the years, it's not wasted, because that's what AI is looking for. It's looking for detail. It's looking for instruction. Not sure if that answered the question really, other than you got to mess with it.
I think that's really helpful. My co-founder Jules has a photography background, and I think that background and technical knowledge of photography and knowing the right language of how to describe an image, it's really helpful. So it's really helpful to think of things from that point of view, to get that more consistent character. But also, to Matthew's point, like every day these image generation models are getting better and better at consistent characters. Google's new video model and image model is I think slightly better than the others at the moment, but next week it will be Midjourney that's better again. So they just keep leapfrogging each other. It's a bit of an arms race right now.
Is that Sora, the
Cool.
one you're talking about?
Yeah, and there's I'm gonna just look up the name for you. I'll come back in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, the Sora, I haven't, it's only available in the US, and I haven't managed to get my VPN to give me access to it yet, which is kind of annoying. But big promises, who can say? It's the one, it is a really exciting time, because this is a technology which we don't really understand. And we're going at it sort of 60 miles an hour, 600 miles an hour. So as a creative person, this is a really interesting time to be involved, because everything's changing.
So could I just ask you
That's
one quick
fascinating.
last question? Just so if you were to recommend, because all of these things cost money, what, because I've currently got Midjourney, I've got all the Adobe suite. I think I've got Runway. I can't remember. Like, what would you say is like, get this, this, and this, and you'll be all right. You'll have it covered. Or is that impossible to say?
Well, no, I think that's good. Cool. Yeah, like I said, I'm fixing on the kind of commercially available ones and the accessible ones. Midjourney, $10 a month for 200 roles is pretty good value. Runway for any kind of animation is comparable, about 10p a second. The Adobe Creative Suite, you can't really do without that, can you? The one I didn't show you earlier is Suno, which is the sound one, where you can take Shakespeare's lyrics and turn them into death metal, and that is bonkers. So, and again, they all cost, but I have to say, when I was a painter, the price of oil paint and canvas and wood was crippling. So this is a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I would suggest the same. Got asked that question yesterday in a workshop, and I think that recommended the same tools as Matthew. But I also recommend just really keeping a horizon scan on what the other tools are up to as well, and just jumping into them and trying them for different things. A couple of really easy ways. So we do like a every other week newsletter, which gives you all the updates on who's best at what tools best at what at that moment in time. And then also do a podcast that does the same thing, but on a monthly basis. I know, Matthew, you could put the QR codes up for those if you don't mind. I think you got there at the end of your presentation.
Oh,
but,
yes.
So the point of those is so you don't have to read every single creative tech article. We'll cut through it for you. And Matthew's, no, don't worry, it's fine.
Is that all right? Oh yeah, this.
No, yeah. And sorry, this is Matthew's exhibition. Go along. I'll send it out in an email afterwards. The details for the for how to keep on top of all the tools and tips and things. But it sounds like you got a good product set there, Rob.
Yeah, let me just see if I can't. I think I've put the wrong slide in of your stuff. But,
don't worry, Matthew. I'll send it out after. It's all good.
Okay.
But anyway, we are way over time, so thank you for all of you who have stayed on. It's really great to have you here with us today. And Matthew, huge thank you to you. It's been really inspiring to see your process. Oh, there we go. Thanks. Yeah, a couple of QR codes. So that the email newsletter is top right, the green one, and then we've got a half-day foundations class where we go into like really practical workshopping use of Midjourney again and ChatGPT in London on the 6th of February. So that's just a QR code for that as well. So yeah, well, we'll send out this recording by email to you all. Keep an eye on your inbox if you want to share it with anyone. And I think that's it. Huge thank you.